Hey everybody, how's it going? Andrew here, and I was just wondering if you could just stop what you're doing. I'm kind of kidding, actually. Like if you're driving a car, or you're really busy. Obviously, I don't want you to stop. But in all seriousness, if you do have a moment and could do me a huge favor, and everybody here on the show, it would simply just write a review or rate the show. So wherever you're listening to the podcast, if you wouldn't mind and take a moment when you can, write a review about the show. It really helps a lot with discoverability and getting more exposure, as I'm sure you can all relate from wish lists and things along those lines. So if you love the show, then share it with someone you know and write a review too. Again, it helps out tremendously with the show, making sure that we can get this out to more people that are looking for helpful content. So that's all I got, and let's get right to the show. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and this is episode 294, where we're going to be talking about building traction for your studio by leveraging your past. Now, there are a number of reasons to start an independent game studio, but the practical side of the process can be quite daunting, especially when you don't have any kind of a track record. So today we're going to be discussing some aspects of starting a new studio and how you can leverage past experiences to build traction with your game while receiving support from partnerships. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey everybody, and we're back, and today with us I have Marnix Licht of Enchanted Works. How's it going, man?
Yeah, good. Good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. Everybody, I think he laughed because he noticed how careful I was in pronouncing his names, where everyone else, I just try to butcher them. So, at least
you butchered it only a little bit.
Okay, I still butchered it, so it's all right.
Oh, the first name was good. The first part was good.
I even looked up Google pronunciations, and I guess that's...
I did that today actually as well. I was like, I had a talk with a investor from Lithuania, and I was like, how do I pronounce this? So it just went to like YouTube and typed in how to pronounce his name, and apparently it's a very common name in Lithuania. So
well, you got lucky then, I guess, right?
Yeah. No.
Awesome. Well, Marnix is here with us because we have a lot of interesting things that we want to talk about, as I mentioned in the intro here. But before we do that, I kind of want to get to know you a little bit more, Marnix, because there's a lot about our topic relates to kind of you in your past, right? So just as I already stated, you're the co-founder of Enchanted Works, and you're making a really cool game that I'm going to let you share a little bit more about in a moment. But before we get into that, I mean, you have quite an interesting and diverse past. I mean, obviously you have, game developer traits. You are a developer. You are also even a Game Sisters designer, and there's a lot of other things. I'm sure you put on different hats in the development world of things. You have been a YouTuber for a while too, which is really interesting, and I'll let you explain that a little bit further in a moment too. And even really cool in all of this, and something my wife would love, because she is a science teacher too, but you were a science teacher at some point for a while. So there's a lot there to expand upon. First, why don't we talk about your history real quick? What were you doing as a science teacher, for example? What was that like for you?
That was so when early on I went to university to study physics and astronomy, with something I was super interested at the time. But turned out that when you go to university, they really push you towards becoming like a researcher and to be very precise with everything you do, and very meticulous.
Yep.
And that really didn't fit me. I was more of a inventor and just experiment, try, screw the methods, just do different things. which wasn't really a good fit. I did really like the mathematics and all that sort of stuff, and I at some point decided like kind of want to follow in maybe my dad's footsteps a little bit, because he was also a science teacher.
Oh, okay.
So I enrolled into like a different course just to become a teacher. And essentially, in my first year, I had to do an internship at a school, and they immediately like hired me, which is not necessarily ideal. So, but I did anyway because they paid for my like tuition and earned money while studying. Seemed like a good deal. So at that point, I was kind of like I was a teacher in education, I was learning like education, but I already had a job as a teacher at the same time, which was kind of weird. And that also caused me to get my degree in teaching a little bit later. But eventually, had a teacher license, I still do, in physics and in chemistry. Decided to also add chemistry to the list.
Nice.
Which was super fun. Like, it was an amazing experience, very challenging. Just like a room full of like 32 15-year-olds.
Right.
And then to get them enthusiastic about science, that's a real challenge.
Oh yeah, I bet. Like as I said, I could relate to a degree. You know, my wife's a science teacher.
Yeah.
But you know it's really interesting because it's like how you outlined that whole process. It's like you started one area and you're like, okay, this is cool, but specifically what they want you to do is not for me. And especially from it sounded like your founding insight there was just the idea and want and desire and passion to like explore new things and look at things differently opposed to just kind of like some of the systems and methodology that's typically used. And I think and it sounds like going to the path of an educator is pretty cool in that sense too. So love that you shared that. But I want to take a couple moments too to kind of dive into some other areas too. Next, let's talk about you being a YouTuber, because that seems like it's like, wow, science teacher, researcher, whatever, and now YouTuber, and for something specifically. So, what was that? How did that go for you?
Well, I mean, it kind of coincided with the I want to be an inventor, like I want to create things, and that's so like at first when Minecraft came out, because it's going to be Minecraft related, I was like, this game is like Duplo. It's like Lego for babies. That was my initial thought. And then like my friends were all playing it, and I was like, no, I'm not touching that. That seems dumb. And then it took me 2 years or something, and then I was like, okay, I'll play multiplayer with you guys. And then it was an amazing game. And then like I discovered, wow, wait, there's redstone in this. I can create like electrical contraptions and stuff. So and I've always been a fan of like puzzle games. So I think one of my first projects was I wanted to make a puzzle game in Minecraft. So I started working on that and was like, okay, I want an elevator now. Then I used redstone to create like an elevator in Minecraft, one of the first in the game, and I was like, wow, this is actually really, really pretty cool. I want to share this on the Minecraft forum. And I want to, like, I can post pictures. So why not create a video? So made a video of my elevator, and that kind of like got some traction for starting YouTube channel.
Nice.
And then I was like, just created more stuff, and this was something I did on the side when I was teaching and studying. So again, a super good combination. Doing two studying chemistry and physics, teaching and making Minecraft videos. But it kind of escalated over time, and then I was really exploring sort of because redstone in Minecraft was sort of unexplored territory. And at one point, you had the slime blocks get introduced, and I went really into like making robots. I was like one of the first people to make a gigantic walking battle robot in Minecraft. And that got picked up by IGN and PC Gamer. They wrote like articles about it, and Kotaku did as well.
Wow.
So that like really grew my audience, and then made some mini games with some really major Minecraft YouTubers, and had a game essentially at some point a paid commission for a Spanish company to make a map. And those have like over 600,000 downloads. So, and I was teaching at the time, and at some point, like, kind of scratched my head. I'm like, wow, people apparently really like stuff I make, and like I'm doing it in Minecraft now. Why don't I learn how to program and start to learn how to make like actual video games? So I enrolled in an art university, and at first got declined. Actually,
Oh man.
they were yeah. They were like, yeah, because my portfolio, like, you had to enter portfolio. There was like a really tight selection. It was a really
Right.
like it was like 700 applications, and they only accepted like 120 or something.
Wow. And I
So
mean, and with just your YouTube videos and figuring how to do things in
yeah,
Minecraft, that's not
art
necessarily
school,
much of a
art
track
school,
record,
yeah.
right?
No, like they were like, oh, like what did you make? Did you make drawings? Like what? Okay, have you programmed already? I'm like, no, like. So my portfolio was like mostly Minecraft stuff.
Yeah.
So you gotta basically they answered why you didn't get accepted, and they were like, you don't have like your artistic capabilities are like not enough right now, and also like your technical capabilities are not enough right now. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna like learn on my own, or like look for. And I actually went to look for like another like school to learn
Yeah.
the programming, etc. And then so I got put on the waiting list, and then somehow um, when I went to like another school from the waiting list, I got accepted. It's like probably one of the last students.
Wow.
But they had no regrets though, because I eventually graduated with probably the highest marks in our year. And that's probably mostly because of age, because I had two bachelors. This is technically my third bachelor, and I went back to school at the age of 30 with like a lot of. I mean, that's kind of what the talk is about as well, right?
Yeah.
Like your past experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like a lot of the students there, they have like a more of an artistic approach. But my background was more analytic because I studied physics and chemistry, etc. And if you use that perspective and you combine it with the things you learn in art school, you kind of get this weird sort of fusion where like it really allows for like lateral thinking, where you can switch between modes and like go from one idea to something completely different.
Yeah, that's so interesting too, because I mean, I know there's probably again a lot we're going to expound upon in a moment, but before we do that, I still want to at least provide you with the opportunity to share a little bit more about where you are at now with your studio in terms of what you're doing, because there's a cool little project you're working on, which I've had the pleasure of playing. I forget what state it was in, but it felt it was in an awesome state and very enjoyable, and that was Nomori, correct?
That's correct. Yes. What you played and what you can still play right now on Steam for free is a tech demo for our upcoming game Nomori. It's called the Nomori Prologue on Steam, and that's something that like we're gonna update probably in a couple months again with like more art, etc. But it's a project that's going to be finished hopefully at the end of next year, and we are currently we just started production, so we are working on a vertical slice right now. Yeah, we're still looking for funding as well. That's kind of the
right. But we have, I mean, there's a lot to go to work with on that and what you're going to share with us today, because it's like there's and I know we've talked like, you know, outside of the podcast here and there in terms of, you know, the directions that you're going and taking, and it all sounds like it's been very positive. And from my look, and now hearing you share this too, you can see like the kind of the progression of what you shared with your past experience into that game now too, which is really cool. And I'm going to leave it at that, folks, because I really do want you to check it out. I found it extremely enjoyable when I'm playing. I'm not purposely trying to plug in Marnix here either. It was just, it looked really interesting. I got involved, and I'm very limited on my time too, and this is something I thoroughly enjoyed and could relax to, but then also bringing it back to everything that we're going to be talking about today is going to be really cool. But before we do that, we need to put you in the cue box round. I know there's a lot we have planned here today, but one of those things is definitely the cue box round. And yes, for those of you who aren't familiar, the cue box round is simply just a series of random questions I've prepared here for Marnix, and he's going to give us a quick, short answer to them unless he really needs to provide some context. So, Marnix, are you ready for the cue box round?
I believe so.
All right. First up is Mario or Luigi?
Ooh. I'm going to go with Mario, and that's going to be based on my experience and many years of playing Super Smash Bros. Melee. Like Luigi's like fun. It's an interesting character to play, but really like clunky. And
Yes.
and Mario is just like Mario is not top tier, but it's up there. Especially Dr. Mario.
Yeah.
Super annoying to play against.
You know you're getting a death stare from Luigi now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, like Luigi terrifies me. He definitely terrifies me.
All right. What's one sport you've wanted to play?
One sport I wanted to play. Does it have to be a real sport, or can I say like Quidditch or something?
That's real. Just why was it Quidditch? Was it Quidditch? Was that the sport you wanted to play? It's okay.
I don't know. Like that's like I in my life I've played a lot of different sports, and just the fact that like flying on a broom seems pretty cool.
I will take it. I know it's not really real. I'm sure someone could try to invent it or come close to it. Like they've got those water hoverboards, right? They could probably play Quidditch on those things.
Exactly.
I'm sure it would get shut down pretty quickly, but in an unorganized capacity, it'd be a lot of fun. So, all right. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh, I would just like to be able to manipulate space and time. That'd be
nice.
Just both. Just go big.
Just go
big or go home. Go big or go home.
Awesome. And last but not least, and the staple here on the show is, what game are you playing now?
At the moment, I am playing Stardew Valley with my girlfriend.
Nice.
It's a very chill game.
That is definitely a good one. So
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And again, going into such detail with your past, because, and I know, folks, we spend a little bit more time than what we typically do, but there's a big reason for that, and we're going to get into it right now with our topic here, which is, building traction for your studio by leveraging your past. So with that said and everything else, I want to kick this off with, because I'm sure this is a question that eats away at everybody at one point or another, is with you, and the way your journey was leading up to the point, how did you know, or when did you know it was time to finally form your studio? And my follow-up to that is there ever a right time?
Yeah, this is an interesting question that also, when we were studying, this was a question because we had a lot of other student groups that were struggling with that question. And I felt back then that, if you're not going to start your studio right now, when you're close to graduating or you graduated, and you're going to find a job at some other studio, then you're just never going to make a studio, right? Because then at that point you have sort of security, because building a studio is a big leap of faith, right? You're going into unknown territory. You probably don't have any funding. So the way we did it, and this is probably not going to be for everyone, but because we were studying, we formed a group with very talented fellow students, and we essentially graduated while making the start of our studio. Just squatting like 2 bugs in one strike. I don't know what the English saying is. But I feel because back then the other especially the people I'm working with, like we had no sort of financial obligations or anything like that.
Mm.
And but I feel like right now, like I don't think people should quit like their livelihood in order to start a studio. That seems like a very, very big leap of faith.
Right. Lots of risk there.
Yeah, lots of risk there. You need some sort of security, and this could take many. This could have many forms. Like you could have saved. That's how a lot of small studios do it. People form like a war chest,
Yep.
and then they use their war chest to build a game. That's one way of going about it. I know that other studios that I've talked with where there's multiple people, we just have one of the members of the team working on a job for a client, and essentially he's funding the other two guys or gals like to work on a game. So that's another way you could go about doing it. But you need something. You need some sort of like safety net.
Yeah.
And for me right now, it's actually it's double weird because I still I'm working on the studio. I'm a co-founder, but 2 days a week right now because I want like the social safety net. I work for an energy company.
Mm.
I make mathematical models for like big solar farms in the Netherlands, and that's right now for me that's enough to kind of like sustain myself while working on the game.
Yeah. So it really comes down to like, you know, finding that area of comfort. And I don't think there's ever a very, very cushy comfort area in terms of
No,
like, unless
no,
it's an extreme situation where you're very, very fortunate or
yeah,
lucky or something like that, right?
yeah,
But in most cases, it's just about finding that balance. There's going to be some risk to it, no matter how you slice it. But then it's also a matter of like how much risk are you comfortable with? Because some of us
exactly,
can live in fear for a lot longer than others can. So
definitely, definitely.
cool. Well, I want to kind of dive in a little bit more in terms of like taking this leap and this plunge and everything, if you will. So, I mean, you shared about what kind of that process looked like and what your thought process was a little bit. I'm curious too. Like, did your past experiences kind of start really playing a role into giving you some level of confidence you felt you needed to take that leap?
Um, that's a good question. I guess. Oh, that's where did the confidence come from? I'm thinking now. Like I have the confidence. What's the source?
Right.
No, I feel like when we were working on the game, like we're at a point where if we can imagine it, given enough time, we can make it happen. That's
Hmm.
kind of the sort of the state of or the illusion we have right now, and like we've yet to be proven wrong, so that's good. That has given us confidence. So just based on like past projects we did in school, I think the reason right now that we have the confidence is that we work together as a team multiple times before. I can imagine if you're starting your studio from scratch and you've never done like a project with people or you're doing it alone and this is your first project, then you probably might not want to start a studio. Like you need some sort of experience, um, having worked at a studio, having worked as a team if you're doing that. um,
I'm curious too, though. What about let's take another moment because I think there might be something else here that we can unearth, if you will. Like looking back to what you shared before. I mean, you started with one specific field, which was what was it, astronomy and physics, and knowing that. But then from that process, what else do you think that process too, where you started there, and it could have been who knows, there could have been a lot from your childhood and growth and everything too that attributed to some of this. But what do you think from that initial process you shared with us and today? Do you think that could be a factor too in terms of how you processed things and moving forward with ultimately what you wanted to strive for?
yeah, so I mean, obviously having a mathematical background really helps when it comes to like programming and like just thinking about things. So that ties in with the sort of mathematical physics background. Funny enough, I also believe that working around with redstone in Minecraft is also really helped with
Mm,
like creating sort of really complex systems. Um, and being able to experiment and just look for like new ideas and see possibilities where others might not see them. And that kind of like passed on during like going to art school,
right.
and that eventually translated in at first like because the game we're working on right now is like the third iteration of an idea that started in the first year with a game that was probably pretty terrible, but it kind of played around with like what happens if you're in a okay, the game was what happens if you're in an alien structure near a black hole. That's kind of like and it's like a four-dimensional space, so that kind of repeats on itself.
Okay.
And like what if you create a puzzle with that? So that was like a four-dimensional puzzle. It's not a good game. It was interesting. It was a good experiment. And then what happened next was later on we got in contact with like some other students with a new project, the ones that we're also working with right now, and they were more like, what if we don't go the sci-fi route, but we go more like Japanese folklore and stuff like that, more like
Mm.
spiritual, more magical. And then we started playing around with portals. And that again tied in with the previous game where because the four-dimensional space was like rotated in on itself. So we created portals that you could rotate, and essentially you could walk on walls and walk on ceilings, which is right now one of the main mechanics of No Mori, what we're working on right now. And we posted that game on itch.io, and that's where you can kind of, this also leans into the question like when is the right time to start a studio. We released that game, and it got a lot of traction. Like people really liked it. So we tested our idea, and the feedback was like, this is interesting. This is good. That game on itch had like over 5,000 downloads. It was a free game, but at least it picked off.
Mm.
Um, and then in the later years, we did another iteration, and like that's when it became more Nomori. And now we're like, we have more people, and we have more skills. We can really apply all the things we've learned. Um,
Yeah. So
and that's that's when the studio got started, essentially.
yeah. So it's kind of like this like ball, like Katamari, maybe, if you will. That's just
Yeah, exactly.
like
Yeah, yeah,
you pick up on the little things that don't seem to add up much, right? And that could be just your experience in the past, but then you realize how much of that can actually attribute to picking up more and more. But then you don't realize it because all that core stuff is like at the bottom of the ball, where now you're getting lots of momentum and picking up the big like skyscrapers instead of the little frogs.
exactly. Yeah.
Oh wow, we might be doing a good job of coming up with some crazy metaphors here on the show. At any rate, no, that's really cool. And I mean, through that too, I want to kind of go into kind of like, as you're getting this traction stuff. Obviously, there's some stumbles, and as you're all still discovering the process. So to start, it's like, what do you think in all of this, though? Because it sounded like you had a good foundation and everything else to work from, but there's got to be challenging things. So what do you think were the most challenging aspects of starting this the studio and forming your team?
Well, I mean, if you're starting a studio, like it's cool that you're making a game, but eventually you have to ship it, right? So you need business. You need to do business. Like you need to like we have big ambitions, so we are looking for a publisher, we're looking for investors, we're looking up like setting up a company, like all the tax things that come along that regard. And that was like also for me, like I didn't have past experience. Well, I guess very limited past experiences because I had to set up like a company for my YouTube. Um, but that was a whole learning experience, and I mean, we were sort of smart about it. We in the Netherlands we have something called the Dutch Game Garden, which is sort of an incubator for starting studios, where you don't really like talk about creating the games, but it's only about business. And like we saw that opportunity, and we're like, we just like this is a skill set that we don't learn in art school. It's what we need. So we essentially enrolled in that and got accepted, which was super helpful. And then like we've been kind of katamari rolling from there, picking up things. And we went to in the Netherlands a smallish like business event for gaming called Indigo.
Yep.
And that's where we had our first fresh experiences with pitching to publishers, and like talking during a live stream to like showcase the game, things like that, which was also really that was an interesting experience. Like how do you make a pitch deck? Like
Right.
how do you write an email that people actually open?
Yeah.
And
Like,
there's a lot of like people on like that share information on this online. If you look for it, like there's so many talks, GDC talks. There was today actually and yesterday the indie game business events.
yep.
Like super interesting. So like you there's opportunities to learn lots of things. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to go to university or school for it. Like there's so much information out there
Right.
if you look for it.
And it's interesting too because it sounds like everything that you mentioned is really just, taking those steps and identifying. So it's like you kind of assess your situation, especially in a case like, you looked at what you knew about something and then decided, do I want to keep on this path or learn something else about it or change it, right? And maybe it could be a combination of those things. So, because all of this obviously is going to be an emotional roller coaster, right? Because it's like,
Oh, definitely.
between it's like
Yeah.
I know this, but I don't know this, so I guess I got to learn that. But it's really interesting to hear how you like what that process looked like, what steps you then took, because all these are a good progression, so you can be focused and practical with your studio. Because if you're just looking at, let's say, hey, I just want to make the game, and the game's the end all and be all, which a lot of times, yeah, that's the bottom line. That's the product you're creating to make sales, to make a living, right? That's the goal we're all for. But if you don't have that pragmatic or practical sense about these things, and going back to how you went into art school and everything, that was sound like a really good process that could be really helpful and applied in a lot of different situations, regardless if it's your background we're talking about or someone else's.
Yeah, it was also just a really good opportunity for me to meet people that have like similar interests.
Yep.
And I think this also ties back a little bit with your previous question about like challenging things when starting a team. Like right now, our team is not like the plan is not we're just gonna make Nomori and then we're done. No, like we sat down and like we assessed what's everyone's ambition, like where do we want to go, and we determined like everyone's noses is pointing in the same direction. Like we want to create the studio. We already have a prototype for our next game, and like multiple game ideas. And I think that's also really important when you're starting a studio. Like you need if you're assuming you're doing it with multiple people, like you kind of want to, because it's such a challenge. Like you want to make sure you're essentially it's a sort of marriage, right? You're starting a company with other founders.
Yeah, it definitely is.
But yeah, so far our marriage has been really good.
Yeah, and it's always challenging, and that's probably we're not going to talk about it, but I think our guest from last week even mentioned how like understanding concepts about like proper business management, not just from a business more technical or just business internal tasks, but also from a management in terms of your team and how do you communicate? Because I mean, we hear it time and again. It really comes down to communication and how to effectively share the vision or be on the same page. Basically, There's
Yeah.
so many times when it's so hard to be on the same page, even if you think you are. Um, so all these different skill sets and stuff that are really interesting. And again, I mean, I want to go back real quick, be like, in terms of making sure people on the same page. I mean, as a teacher, you kind of have to make sure everybody's on the same page, and you know that everybody isn't. And I know
Yeah,
from
yeah,
what my wife
yeah,
has to share with
yeah.
me sometimes about her students, but you're kind of wrangling them and making sure that's the case and that they all get it. Do you think any of that could have applied too sometimes in these relationships that you're forming with either new partners or even your team members?
I mean, with my team members, well, like, we are all on the same level. Like, we don't have because we're so small. Like, you want to be really flexible and like work, like have people work on things and have like there's no micromanagement, right? Because it's kind of just a waste of time in a sense.
Yep.
We have so many things that need to be done, and we just because we've worked together so long, we know what we can expect from each other. We know like what people's strong points are and like less strong points. I think as soon as you get a bigger team, definitely the hierarchy and like management really comes into play. We have one person on our team that's more like focused on project management, so he just like one-on-ones with people every now and then.
Mm.
But it's mostly like just on stand-ups every morning. Like what's everyone working on? Like what's the goal right now? What we're working on? Things like that. And that is for us that is enough right
Yeah.
now.
But
Um,
and it still
but
comes.
as for the question, oh sorry, yeah,
I was just going to say, it still comes back to the communication. I mean, that's clear what we're
yeah,
doing.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Like, but I felt like as a teacher, you're sort of at a different level compared to students. Like it's
Right.
really like you are the teacher, right? It's like if things happen because you say, like you're not going to get into a discussion like that.
Right.
Um,
With 15 and
I
17 year
mean,
olds.
no, like,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the kids will try, but like that, just no,
Yeah.
like that's not how it works.
Right. Some fine lines
But
there.
yeah, some fine lines there. Like yeah, like this is the relationship that we have. Like I am the teacher. Yeah. But there's other skills though from being a teacher that are extremely helpful. Like um, obviously, I think patience is a really good one.
Mm.
But also just being able to talk in front of a group. And like as a teacher, I doubt there's any teachers that like prepare their lesson plan line by line. Like people just improvise and like go and like you have a conversation, just take it somewhere else. Like you're doing a presentation, I don't like prepare word for word what I'm about to say. Like it just kind of comes out because that's what I've been doing for 8 years. And that kind of also ties in because like we went to Indigo and then at some point we went to Gamescom in Cologne. That was like our first actual sort of quote unquote business experience as a studio. Where in the 3 days we were there, I had like 28 scheduled meetings with publishers and investors. And it was just through like a meet to match, it was called.
Yep.
And that was super insightful. Had a lot of good talks. I still am in contact with a lot of like publishers that I spoke to back then. But one of the funniest things was there was an indie or like a pitching competition that we kind of haphazardly. I saw it come by on Twitter or something, and I was like, oh, I'm there. Like I just instantly signed up, not really super like getting into what I was getting into, but I saw an opportunity and I just pounced on it.
There you go.
And I had been giving like talks about the game the entire day, like just to different publishers, investors. And then we went to some fancy hotel because that was where the pitching competition was at. And we had all these like industry veterans that had combined like 100 years of experience. And we had to do like a 5-minute pitch, like 7 times for different investors.
Wow.
And I had nothing prepared. I had no slides. But I had the game. Like we had a tech demo. So I did the pitch because that's how I've been doing my pitch the whole time. Like the slides are cool, but if you can show actual like the game, it's much better. So we did the pitch 7 times, and then at the end of the evening, like there was like an event, and then they announced the winner of the pitching event, and we won. Just,
That's awesome.
it was a good experience. But I felt like the reason that worked was because of past experience, like talking to people and like making people enthusiastic about science or making people enthusiastic about our game, which is easier probably. It just came kind of natural. So yeah, I don't
That's
know if this ties in with your
no,
question.
it's fine. I mean, it's a really interesting story too, and I think it says the thing. I mean, yes, it was very specific, I think, in a way where I think most of us can draw from being related to a teacher in terms of that job. Like, hey, you're always like, you're putting together plans, rough ideas, and you're talking about it regularly. So maybe that's something example. No, we're not saying go be a teacher now, but through that practice, that whole process of being a teacher created this thing that came to you pretty organically, even though you were completely unprepared, as you just admitted. I accepted. I didn't know what I was getting myself into as an opportunity. Great, and these things I think is really important. And like one of other skill sets. I mean, another one you mentioned was patience, and I'm just curious too. Like just off the top of your head, what other types of skill sets do you think could be leveraged in similar ways for new studios, because those were two great examples in terms of how that could be. But anything else that comes to mind?
I think one of the most important things that you can learn in a lot of different fields is perseverance. I think that's probably one of the biggest ones because, like, it's not easy.
Right.
Like the like you're gonna be met with disappointment. I mean, even at Gamescom during the day, like, just someone just not showing up for a meeting and stuff like that. Like dealing with disappointment. That's also something like people learn from just life experience. What's another good one? Communication, obviously, like we already mentioned it. Like there's so much life experience you can have that can help you, like with communication.
And
just writing like catchy emails with good grammar and stuff.
yeah, and
like yeah.
No, these are all great. And I kind of the point I want to draw out of this too is that I know we showcased a lot about your own past experience, and it's like, and I know in the past we've talked too how your show having a YouTube has allowed you to get better connections and network better, or maybe a little bit easier or whatever with like other YouTubers and such, because you're part of that network, right? So
Yeah.
Those are like specific things that we can draw from. But on top of that, I mean, here are just some key words. You're saying patience, perseverance, communication, writing. I mean, these are all things, skill sets that we draw every day from everything that we do one way, shape, or another. And it's just about our experiences and how we apply them to this industry, about, game development and such, that can make it really interesting and diverse. So I guess I wanted to just call that out because it's easy to maybe hear you and be like, oh, well, that makes sense in this case. In this case, you're just finding a way to make it how it made sense for you based off of your experience. But I don't see how anybody else could do the same.
Yeah, but I think
they would be able to.
Yeah, they should be able to. Yeah.
So okay. Yeah. So with that and everything, I'm also curious too, because a lot of things that you shared with us today are, a lot of people are in the same boat, right? They're doing the same types of things, at least to some extent, right? They're very similar. So with studios out there doing things basically similar to you, or maybe having similar past experiences that they're able to apply to their business, to their studio, how are you then, knowing this, because I'm sure you do, how are you then trying to differentiate yourself?
Well, I mean, like I'm personally trying to leverage my past experiences from fields that are maybe not supernatural when it comes to game development, and turning that into a game that perhaps not everyone can make. And I feel that there's a lot of people's past experiences that are very unique, that allow them to make the game that only they can make based on those experiences.
I couldn't think of a better answer. And it's really funny that you say that too, because when you're saying that, it reminded me, we're going back here, folks, when I was in college and I took an autobiography class. And the biggest problem everybody had was simply, okay, how do you write something about yourself that's interesting? Because that was like a good core focus of the course starting out. Because everybody had the problem, like, well, my life was kind of boring if you think about it. Like, and through the course, we started, the professor was helpful in guiding us in different ways and like how to make those past experiences really exciting. And there's a lot of factors that came into play. But in essence, it's not that much different based on what you just said, and what it comes
Yeah,
down to. It's about the me,
yeah,
and such an important part because we all the time think about different ways to how do we differentiate ourselves and everything else, and we're very productized in that, which obviously you need to be to some extent. But then
Mhm.
there's the other side of it as like a studio, as a brand, an image, whatever else label you want to throw on it. It comes down to the you, in which that's why I'm like you couldn't have said that any better. Such a
And it becomes like just to add on, it becomes even better when you work with other people that have completely different experiences,
right, yeah,
and then you combine that
yeah,
because the game we're making right now, there's no way I could make that on my own. I bring in like the weird mechanicy stuff and like physics, etc. And then we have other people that come up with like a whole different things, like the feel of the game or the art style or just their general knowledge of the Japanese folklore, things like that. And that's like when you combine that, that's when you get the even crazier things.
yeah. Oh, so well said. Well, I mean, I don't know. There's just been so many great things here, and I really could talk on forever about this, and it's just been such a great conversation. But we do have to close soon. But before we do, I would love for you to share, I don't know, any tips or suggestions that you may have for our listeners today based off of what we have been talking about.
Based off of what we've been talking about.
Or even in general as it relates. There are your suggestions or tips. So,
Okay, I think the first tip I would give is like keep your eyes open for opportunities. Like I mentioned with the indie pitch, like sometimes things just happen. Like just don't box yourself in your own world. Just
mm,
keep an eye open on like events or maybe other people are doing things similar to you that you can like interact with. That kind of like leads on to the second part. Just talk to people. Uh, like schedule, say, find people that have similar interests, find marketing people to talk to an investor. Like they might just have tips. I think one of the biggest things I did was get in touch with someone who made a somewhat similar game that was successful. And if you formulate your email nicely enough, like they might actually like accept a call with you, which is
mm,
what happened, which taught me so many things. um, and also don't shy away from people that you might think these people like might not have something that could be helpful for me or like that I could relate to. Like we've had the most interesting conversations with people that were completely sort of unrelated and in different fields. I
mm.
don't know.
No, that's a good one too. And because I mean, think about it. It can go back to whether they're in the industry or not. It can still go back to kind of like the past experiences. Like a lot of times, and there's so many people in the industry these days that don't have any either formal training or history of of being in the industry or anything to that extent. But yet here they are, and they're just bringing so much diversity and perspectives and everything else to this industry. And if it wasn't for these people coming from different areas, I think this would be a much different place.
Definitely, yeah, yeah.
So good point there. And anything else? You said don't shy away from people. Great one. And one more if you can. I know I'm pushing you here.
What's another really good one? Um, yeah, don't be afraid to just show what you have. Like it's better to find out early that like what you're doing is not appealing than to find out late. Just make a video, post it on Reddit. There's a lot of like you use things like itch.io. Just get your game out there, get your idea out there. Like I feel like a lot of people are afraid that someone's going to steal it or something. And that people are hesitant, or alternatively, it's not ready, it's not good enough yet. That's the other end of the spectrum. But as soon as you see people interacting with your idea, like then that gives also an opportunity for even to iterate on it.
Right.
In our game, I guess just an anecdote at the end. We have mechanics and we made levels, and then we were like, oh, this is a normal level, so these are places that the player will never go to, so we do not have to add collision for the player there. And then people started messing around with our game, and like they, I wouldn't say they broke it, but like they took it to the extreme. And now our design pillar is like everything needs to have a collider because they managed to get everywhere. And that these are things that you only find out if you actually let people just take your idea and like play with it.
Yeah. No, well said. So many good things here, and thank you for sharing those tips. And really, love having you on the show. But before we part, I'd love for you to share any other information about Noami, or in terms of where people can get it. You mentioned it was on Steam, or if there's a good way people could reach out to you if they want to connect. What are some good ways to find out more or to connect with you?
Well, from a sort of business side, the easiest way for me to connect is via LinkedIn. If you look for Marnix Licht, and as for our studio, you can also find that via LinkedIn. It's called Enchanted Works, and you can follow us on Twitter if you want to keep updated on the game at Enchanted Works. And then, if you have the time, like our tech demo is quite fun. It's like half an hour.
It is.
Maybe less if you're really good.
I can attest.
Go check it out. And give us feedback. Let us know what you think.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And please, everybody, definitely check out the game. As I said, I'm usually short on time, as you all know. And so when I do find something that looks like it's going to be quite relaxing and fun and challenging, I do like to share and promote it. So, and this is definitely one right there. So, well, Marnix, thank you so much for being here and really sharing everything about your past experiences and how they're really giving you some traction moving forward, and wish you the best of luck.
Oh, thank you for having me, Andrew. It was nice. Good talk.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.